They call it Ironwood, a vast, desolate stretch of land positioned at the choke point of every lucrative illicit route in the state contraband, unregistered mining exports, undocumented passage. Up until the day Marshal Jake Riley rode in, the inhabitants of Ironwood believed this dust belonged to them, and that the only law that mattered was the one carved with a bullet. Riley called it a cemetery waiting to happen. The earth here stained red with the blood of generations who mistook ownership for destiny. For decades, the power to decide who lived and who starved was held in a delicate, vicious balance by two names, Shaw and Thorne. On one side stood the Shaw clan. The Shaws were the brawlers, the men of action who favored speed and intimidation. They controlled the northern border, the rocky, hard-to-navigate terrain, and their claim to the land was the bitter memory of a past injustice, a forgotten treaty they clung to like a desperate lifeline. They were ruled by Victor Shaw, a man whose pride was thicker than the steel in his safe, who taught his sons that justice was just revenge wrapped in a clever lie. At the heart of the Shaw compound, a sprawling, fortified ranch, Victor studied an oversized, faded map spread across a rustic wooden table. His hands, gnarled and powerful, traced the lines that had defined his life. "Look at it, son," Victor commanded, his voice a gravelly, low rumble. "Look at the line they drew. 40 years ago, a piece of paper decided our future. 40 years we've been choked by that Thorne Syndicate line. We were born on the wrong side of it, but we won't die on the wrong side of it." Victor's son, Caleb Shaw, stood a careful distance away. Caleb was strong, inheriting his father's physical resilience, but his heart was not as cold. He saw the waste, the debt, and the endless cycle of violence. He reminded his father that the Thorns had sealed the old ravine route. "The last shipment almost didn't make it," Caleb argued, his tone measured. "If we push this, they'll retaliate against the main storage house. It's too exposed. But in Ironwood, loyalty isn't earned. It's a chain placed on you at birth, and Caleb's chain was forged in the bitter memory of his older brother, Ethan. Retaliation?" Victor gave a cold, dismissive laugh. Let them. They think they cornered the market when they seized that land. They think a piece of paper makes them owners. They're wrong. They forgot the only thing that matters in this territory is iron, the kind you swing and the kind you shoot. Victor slammed his hand on the map, pointing to a central unmarked path. "The old river trail. It belongs to us. We run the next batch through there tomorrow, daylight. We claim it back." It's time Elias Thorne remembered fear. Caleb's face tightened with internal conflict. He knew the danger intimately. That path runs right by the Thorns' new homestead. Lila, she uses that path for her daily ride. Victor simply smiled, a terrifying lack of warmth in the gesture. Then it's a good day for Elias Thorne to learn caution, and a better day for us to show strength. "Prepare the men, Caleb. Tell them we fight for the claim." Caleb nodded, his conflict hidden behind a disciplined mask, and exited, knowing he had just set his own sister in the path of a gathering storm. The Shaws were the iron fist, but the Thorns were the velvet glove lined with razor blades. If Victor Shaw was fueled by pride, Elias Thorne was driven by calculation. The Thorne Syndicate controlled the profitable flatlands, the legal fronts, the banks, the local judiciary, everything that smelled like respectability. Their claim was built on pure, unadulterated acquisition. They bought it all, legally or otherwise. In the imposing, elegant Thorne mansion, Elias, sharp and calculating in his 60s, oversaw a detailed accounting ledger. He didn't look up when his daughter, Audrey Thorne, addressed him. Shaw tried to bypass us again. They ran 3 trucks down the Black Canyon. My men intercepted one. Where are the others? Audrey Thorne, composed and impeccably dressed, was Elias's secret weapon. She was bred to be a diplomat in a den of vipers, capable of speaking to bankers and crooked politicians with equal ease. She believed in the syndicate's survival, but harbored a quiet disdain for the brutality that sustained it. They slipped past the boundary markers we established last month, she stated calmly. They know our blind spots. The roots aren't the problem, Father. It's their desperation. They are pushing closer to our primary storage hub with every failure. We need to offer a definitive countermeasure, not just another skirmish. Elias proposed the sale of the West Ridge plot, the only remaining open land the Shaws could use for refuge. If they lose that, they're contained, he declared. Audrey was immediate in her objection. That land has been in dispute for generations. Selling it now will just invite more legal scrutiny. It draws attention to the fraud that put us in possession of the deeds 20 years ago. Victor Shaw is reckless, but he has archives. Elias finally looked up, his cold, predatory stare fixing on her. You're getting soft, Audrey. You sound like a solicitor, not a Thorne. What use is respectability if we're suffocated by the smell of their poverty? We control Ironwood. We make the law, and the law says the Shaws lose. A sale goes through tomorrow. Draft the final documents, and send a message. Remind Victor Shaw that we remember Marcus. Audrey's composure broke for a fleeting second at the mention of her dead brother Marcus, a casualty of the feud. It will be done, Father, she replied, her voice steadying, but be mindful of the cost. The faster they fall, the harder they will fight. Elias smiled grimly. Good. Let them fight. I'm tired of waiting. Let the war begin. As Audrey exited the opulent room, she pulled out a small, ornate silver locket. Running her thumb over it, her expression a perfect blend of pain and conflicted duty. Elias Thorne was a patient man, but even patient men bleed, and his ledger was about to come due. The chaos of Ironwood had manufactured its own reckoning, and it rode in a sleek black Federal car. Marshal Jake Riley arrived not seeking justice, which he viewed as a luxury Ironwood couldn't afford, but seeking to impose order, a non-negotiable term of surrender. He was here to ensure the Shaw and Thorne families finally led to their mutual destruction, allowing the law to pick up the pieces. The town center was ground zero, a small derelict square where every business, from the bar to the bank, had an invisible double-sided ledger. Nobody breathed without permission from one family or the other. Riley, immaculate in his suit, stepped out of the car, carrying a briefcase, not a rifle. His arrival was like a stone dropped in still water, instantly rippling through every corner of the community. A few seconds passed. Then the sound of doors clicking shut echoed through the square. The town was suddenly empty. Riley surveyed the scene. He was methodical, meticulous. He knew the families would not fear his badge or his federal title. They only respected force. He had to be their worst assumption and their deepest fear all at once. He walked into the sheriff's office, an unremarkable building that smelled of dust and unkept secrets. Sheriff Hayes, a man who had long ago traded his integrity for a reliable paycheck from the Thornes, looked up, startled. "Marshal Riley, didn't expect you for another week." Riley placed his briefcase on the sheriff's desk, the polished leather a startling contrast to the cracked wood. "Ironwood doesn't look like the kind of place that rewards tardiness, Sheriff. I'm here to establish the federal presence, and my first order of business is acquiring all local records on the Shaw and Thorne families. Every fine, every arrest, every sealed deposition." The sheriff stammered, pulling at his collar. "Marshal, with all due respect, those files, they're complicated. Lots of boundary disputes. The families manage the territory themselves, you see." Riley's eyes narrowed. "I see a territory that has managed itself into a state of criminal enterprise. The complexity is not my problem, Sheriff. The lack of compliance will be yours. I want those files delivered to my office within the hour. No redactions. No excuses." The sheriff swallowed hard, knowing he was caught between the Marshal's steel and the Thorne Syndicate's ice. It took only 15 minutes for the families to react. They didn't send lawyers. They set their muscle. A hulking man named Silas Knox, Victor Shaw's head of security, arrived first. He was all brutal silence and coiled menace. Simultaneously, a sharply dressed, cold-eyed woman named Rhea, Audrey Thorne's legal representative, arrived in an expensive black vehicle. They didn't acknowledge each other. Their disdain for one another was as thick as the dust on the road. They entered the sheriff's office and found Riley calmly setting up a portable satellite phone on the desk. Silas Knox spoke first, his voice a low growl that shook the window panes. "Federal Marshal, I'm here on behalf of Mr. Victor Shaw. He's curious about your presence. Anything you need, you ask us. We handle the peace here." Rhea stepped forward smoothly, her tone silkier but equally threatening. "And I represent Mr. Elias Thorne and the Syndicate. Any official inquiries must be routed through our counsel in the city. Any immediate demands on local government records should be reviewed for executive privilege and proprietary information." Riley didn't look up from his phone. "Peace? Ironwood has never seen a day of peace that wasn't paid for with intimidation. And privilege? The only privilege I recognize is the law. You are both standing in my way. I require the full ledger of all land sales, water rights, and contraband complaints involving both families for the last 20 years. If that information is not forthcoming, I will issue a federal subpoena to freeze all associated assets and begin criminal conspiracy investigations." Silas took a step closer, his shadow falling over Riley. "That's a big threat to make in a small town, Marshal. Outsiders have a way of disappearing here." Riley finally looked up, his eyes utterly without fear. "The difference between me and the last outsider, Mr. Knox, is that I have already filed a detailed manifest of my investigation with 3 federal agencies. If I disappear, the entire territory will be placed under federal receivership within 48 hours. Every account, every deed, every piece of land your families fought over will belong to the government. You haven't cornered the market on power, gentlemen. You've just cornered yourselves." The veiled warning hung heavy in the air. Rhea understood the magnitude of the threat immediately. She saw the methodical nature of the man, the preparedness. Silas, driven by Victor's primal rage, only saw a target. Rhea, however, spoke into the charged silence. "We will advise our respective principals of your unconventional methods, Marshal. Expect a formal response. She shot Silas a look of utter disgust and left. Silas lingered, his muscles twitching, before deciding the risk wasn't worth the immediate consequences, and grudgingly followed. Riley had won the first skirmish, but the battle had barely begun. He knew they were both now speeding up their timeline for war, hoping to eliminate the other before the law could fully intervene. The Marshal's arrival acted as a powerful accelerant, pushing both patriarchs to cross lines they might have hesitated over before. The threat of losing everything to a federal takeover made the current feud seem like a necessary evil. Victor Shaw, already committed to running his contraband through the old river trail, received Silas's report with a cold, contained fury. "He plays a long game, this Marshal," Victor muttered to Caleb. "Well, we'll play faster." Victor knew the old river trail wasn't just a route. It was a line of engagement. By choosing it, he wasn't just moving goods. He was challenging Elias Thorne's right to keep his private homestead sacred. Victor doubled the size of the convoy and armed every man heavily. He gave Caleb the final instruction: the goal is not to deliver the goods without incident. The goal is to provoke the incident. Elias has to know we will trespass anywhere we choose. He didn't care about the goods. He cared about the claim. Meanwhile, across the valley at the Thorne mansion, Audrey was drafting the final documents for the West Ridge sale. She had already dispatched her lawyers to finalize the hostile takeover of the disputed land, a decisive measure designed to strategically choke the Shaws and render them strategically irrelevant. Elias, reviewing the documents, chuckled darkly. Containment. Beautiful, Audrey. With that land gone, they lose their only legitimate escape route. Then we can push the county on their outstanding back taxes. We'll bankrupt them by the end of the month. He paused, tapping the file of the West Ridge sale. But they'll retaliate, surely. Victor won't go quietly. Audrey nodded. They're already running a large shipment tomorrow. Silas reported unusual movement near the river trails. Elias smiled, a cold, reptilian gesture. He knew Victor's pride. He knew Victor would run the trail that passed closest to Thorne's property, perhaps even the old river path that skirted Lila Shaw's riding area. It was an insult, and Elias Thorne never let an insult go unanswered. He leaned back in his chair, eyes glittering. Send a detail. Not police. Our own men, but keep them disguised as simple security. Let them wait where the old river path intersects the main border road. If the Shaws cross that boundary, they aren't just trespassing. They are invading. His instructions were precise. No full engagement. Just enough to show them the claim is defended, and enough to teach Victor Shaw a lesson in manners. The stage was set. Victor had deliberately sent his son and his sister's wife into the path of danger to make a point. Elias had set a meticulous, deadly trap to defend his title. The arrival of Marshal Riley had not brought order. It had merely accelerated the generations of hatred into an explosive confrontation. The sun set over Ironwood, illuminating the red dust of the Tur. Audrey Thorne watched her father's security detail roll out. Neither realized that the deadly spark of their feud was about to ignite, claiming the lives of the only two people who truly believed the war was worth fighting, the heirs. The claim was about to be paid for in blood.